I'd been married for about 4 years when I moved to Fishtown. And my wife at the time left in 2007, and it was one of the most devastating things that ever happened to me. Just the shock and trying to figure out, where my compass was. I always felt that my compass was spinning to the point where I didn't have any control over my life.
I just remember she was upset, and I was in the basement working on the basement, putting it together, and she came down. I saw her grab some bags to pack and went back upstairs, and Dave was calling me and asking me if she was there, and I didn't know how to handle it. I remember calling my wife next door saying, I don't know what to say, it doesn't look good and everything. And that was the night that she left. And Dave came home, and I remember I was in the middle of working on his basement. So now, I have this half-finished basement of my neighbor and a broken man, So there'd be times when I'd come over and I'd be working on the basement, and he would just sit on the basement steps and just talk. And I would just listen, because I didn't know how to give anybody advice on something as traumatic as going through a separation. And I just remember it being very, very difficult for him.
All the things that were familiar were no longer. The person that I'd shared my life with, I'd walked out, and it was especially devastating, when the last piece of furniture went on the moving truck and the moving truck's driving away. I turned back and came into the house, and there was an echo. It just made me realize that from that point on, my life was going to be different.
Good thing is I finished the basement.
Your whole world, my whole world was turned upside down. I remember just feeling complete emptiness and not really knowing what to do. One day I was at my lowest point, and I just needed to get out of the house. I just stepped outside my door and ran down to the end of my block. It felt kind of good. Wasn't quite sure where I was going, but when I reached the end, when I reached the corner, I felt a little better. And it struck me, it's like, I don't know what I just did, but I'm gonna keep doing it. I realized that the physical aspect, the physical exertion of doing some exercise, which I hadn't done in years, brought a sense of relief. I guess it relieved the stress, but also took my mind into a different place, and also gave me a sense of control. I could pick the time when I put on my shoes. I could pick the time when I decided to go out the door. I could pick the time when I went on a run. For me, running became therapeutic. Every time I'd go for a run, it would be like taking medicine. I ended up running my first mile, and I was so excited. And I'm like, wow, my first mile. And I thought, well, gee, if I could do a mile, maybe I could do a 5K. I didn't even know what a 5K was. It might as well have been, a full marathon, because it sounded so unattainable. I ran to my friend Eric's house, rapped on the door, and said, Eric, can you train me? And he goes, yeah, I can train you. I go, Eric, can you train me? He said, yeah, I can train you. Good. What am I training you to do?
So originally, when David and I would run, David would do most of the talking, but I can listen, certainly. And I thought, wow, this is something that he could really get into and invest himself into. So I encouraged him to run all the time, and it was always great running with David.
We talked about everything. He told me about what's going on in his life. I told him about my life, and it always would come back to what I was going through. One day we were talking, and Eric says, yeah, I read about this study that was done in Spain. This Spanish doctor said that if you drink a beer after a run, you'll feel better and it won't hurt you. And it really caught my attention. And as we're running, and he's talking about this professor and this study, we happened to be passing a bar.
A place called the New Wave Cafe, and had a pitcher of beer after a 5-mile run, and felt great. We felt fantastic.
And it dawned on us is that we really didn't know what beer to order. I mean, what did the study suggest? Was it a lager? Was it an ale? Is it 1 beer, 2 beers? And we realized that the study left many more questions unanswered than it answered. The next day, we went out for another training run. We just happened to be running by a bar, and we tried it again. It got to the point where it was something that Eric and I really enjoyed. I said, Eric, this is bigger than us. We got to share this with the world. So, good evening. Welcome to Fishtown Beer Runners, responsible running and drinking in the interest of science. Welcome. The way it works is we run together for about a block or two, and then we break down into our own paces. It's a fun run. You just get to the bar, no questions asked. Okay? Once we get to the bar, we'll do our traditional toast to the professor. If you don't know who the professor is, you can ask just about anybody who's wearing a shirt.
The decision to move away from just David and I running was David's idea. I think his natural instinct is always to bring more people in, which is part of what makes him special.
And I said, you know, if I'm going to be a runner, then why not make it fun? Why not bring other people along?
I never actually ran before in my life. Then he started talking about beer running, and I thought, well, I like beer. I guess I'll grow to like running. So we went on the first beer run was to Druid's Keep, and it was me, my wife, Larry, and David.
It was a decent run for the first time, and it was my first run. I think I may have walked some of it, but that was fine. I think I ran better on the way back after I had a few beers, but that's another story.
It just kind of grew. And it grew primarily because of the idea that Eric put in my head, which is that you could run and you could have a beer afterwards. There's that sense of that personal satisfaction, knowing that you've earned it as well. It just makes the beer taste that much better. Might not have earned the other ones during the week, but that one I've earned. When you have a beer in your hand, the most natural thing is to toast, because it is such a celebratory drink. And what is it that we have to celebrate? Well, the whole reason I felt that we were here in the first place was because of the professor. And I thought that it was very important that we acknowledge and pay tribute to his research and to his efforts by toasting him. In the tradition of the Fishtown Beer Runners, responsible running and drinking in the interest of science, to the professor! To the professor! To the professor!
Just opened up Llama Tooth, and a friend of my nephew said, hey, I could bring the Fishtown Beer Runners here. And I said, yeah, whatever. Well, they showed up that night, and I was behind the bar, and I looked over the bar and I thought to myself, why am I working? I want to be with them. So then the next week I ran with the Beer Runners, and ever since then I've truly enjoyed being with them. It's a great group of people.
They're a funny group. There's a big mob of them. I don't know. Sometimes it's 50, sometimes it's 80. I don't know how many people it is.
The more we got to learn about it, the more we realized that the people that run in his group are from all over the city, from every walk of life. from every socioeconomic variable that there is.
They run and they all pile in the bar at once. And even in the middle of winter, like today is December 19th, and it's a cold night, and they're all in running gear and shorts and all whatever, hyped up about the run. And they come in and they're their best bar customers you can imagine, dressing aside.
A lot of times the other groups, it's not so social. I mean, you run together, great, but they don't have as much interaction with each other. Here with this group, of course, everybody stays for an hour, 2 hours, 6 hours, whatever.
We love it, you know? It's like, there's groups that come to bars and do all this kind of things. There's singles groups, there's this group, there's all that kind of stuff. And these guys are running for science.
I mean, I think it's a natural fit, right? It makes sense. You know, most runners are beer drinkers. And then I think what that missing piece was, the thing that kind of brought it all together, was this interesting story about the professor, right? The professor and this study and this research that he's done that, you know, supports this notion that you can rehydrate, you know, responsibly through drinking beer. So I think when you took running club combined with going to a different bar every week, but then you throw in that little caveat, which is in the name of science.
Alcohol, if you have an excessive intake, is absolutely negative. It's bad for your health, but if you drink a little bit, this little bit can be of help in order to cope with stress. What prompted me was the fact that I was doing exercise, and after doing exercise, having a beer or 2 or even 3 beers. And I didn't know if it was a right attitude or not.
Everybody assumes that that the professor, you know, was a runner and decided to do the beer study to support the idea of, you know, having a beer after a run. But he actually is a skier.
And that was the main issue of a discussion that I have with my brother-in-law, which is a chemist, when skiing in Sierra Nevada, that is Sierra Nevada. And after a journey of skiing, I did what I always did. It was to order a beer with a sandwich, something to eat. And my brother-in-law said that I was crazy, which is true.
Most of the research that has been done, or for not saying all the research that has been done in relation to alcohol, is done in relation to the negative effect of alcohol. No research has been done in relation to a positive effect of alcohol. And this was one of the first in which alcohol in moderate amounts could have a positive effect.
It was tough, trust me, it was tough. Running 1 hour and then drinking. You saw my face completely exhausted with the beer. Really many people come to me and tell me, hey man, I saw interesting news in the media about drinking beer after exercise. I think I even saw your face in a picture. That was me. That was me. And then I started explaining everything. What you hear today about what beer demonstrated to be as good as water in terms of rehydrating after exercise.
Those subjects who drink a little bit of alcohol, moderate amounts, 2 beers for men, 1 beer for women, have a lower mortality than those who do not drink at all.
And obviously, beyond these moderate consumptions, the higher the amount you consume, the worse is for your health.
Our motto is responsible running and drinking in the interest of science. And people always ask, well, what does that mean? Responsible drinking is quite obvious. It's to enjoy beer in a manner where you're not going to excess. The last thing I want is for the beer runners to be thought of as a drinking club. We're a running club.
There are people who look at our group and they kind of wink at it like beer runners, like we're going to go through this short formality of, you know, running a mile so we can go hang out in a bar for 3 or 4 hours. And that's, of course, not really what it's about at all. It is much more a running club than it is a beer club. We wouldn't want to take the beer away from it. I'd be the first person to say I wouldn't want to do that because it's very important and it makes the end of the run, you know, really nice. But it's a running club.
Hash House Harriers are a group who fancy themselves as a drinking club with a running problem. I did that in England for a couple years. I did it in State College, Pennsylvania. The two groups are very similar. The beer runners are a genuine running club that enjoy drinking. I wouldn't flip the two. I wouldn't say it's a running club with a drinking problem, because that doesn't sound good at all.
You know, what I always say, what's the difference between the beer runners and a group like the Hashers is, the Hashers actually run away from a bar. We don't. We run to a bar, we stay for the bar, we do not leave the bar. And that's, in my opinion, the first rule of beer runners. You never run away from a bar, and unless you're running
Your
beer.
rule is also you don't run past a bar and look back.
I love the Hashers, like, don't get me wrong, but I understand that it's not for everyone, because there's kind of like a fraternity type aspect to the hashing that can turn a lot of people off. And I think Hashers understand that themselves. The beer runners have a more family-friendly atmosphere of it. So I think it would be the perfect thing for people who used to hash and they may feel like, oh, I outgrew that. I think the beer runners are the perfect thing for those sorts of former hashers.
There's a stigma with beer, and in my view, it's very much an American thing. I love my country, but I think in this country, you know, we look at beer as, you know, what you see during the, you know, the commercials on Sunday during the NFL games, and it's just not, you know, it just doesn't have much sophistication to it. Whereas, you know, wine, for example, there's always some kind of sophisticated fundraiser or a tasting or whatever where people, you know, go to that, and that's, you know, that's seen as a very sophisticated thing. What we do is drink it in moderation, and we drink it afterwards. We don't drink it before, we don't drink it during, and you know, we appreciate it.
Run and drink responsibly in the interest of science!
I think we like being examples of having a beer after you do a run and then just enjoying it, not a club that goes and runs so they can drink beer.
When I started the Fishtown Beer Runners, I was concerned that people would think that we weren't a running club. It was very important to me that we be taken seriously. The concept of beer and running, every time I talk about it, somebody always asks, are you serious? Is it for real? And yeah, it is, you know, and I wanted people to know that we are runners. And part of that was, you know, making the club more legitimate and by recruiting and just attracting runners.
I had just recently purchased myself a brand new pair of Chuck Taylor All-Stars and thought, you know what, this is perfect. Like, it coincided well with the concept that it didn't matter if you were, you know, a professional runner or your experience level, or even if you were gonna run. When I pitched it to David, said immediately, like, well, who's gonna ever run in Chucks? And I was like, well, no, that's the point. Like, it doesn't matter if you have a $200 pair of running shoes or if you're just grabbing your beat up pair of sneakers out of the back of your closet, you know? It's come one, come all, come as you are. He thought that was a great concept as well, so I immediately took out a brayer with some ink, inked up my foot, and started doing footprints.
Now that we all have shirts, it becomes much easier, because now that's how a lot of new people actually join up with us. I mean, they're planning on going to the runs, but they're not quite sure where it is, and they spot a shirt and they just sort of follow you.
And I remember when our first marathoner joined the Fishtown Beer Runners, I was like, yes, we are a running club. Putting together the newsletter, I was so proud of it that I decided that, you know, I should just send this to the professor.
To me, it was like a young child writing to Santa Claus.
The first thing I thought was, why? So funny? This is funny.
For some reason, I thought he would want to know that there were people out there utilizing his research.
Since they do that, they deserve answering this to this email.
It blew my mind when the professor wrote back.
And I was very excited, you know, emailing him, and I explained, you know, that we run 3 to 5 miles, and that even though, you know, we were going to a bar, that we were real runners, and And then at the bar that we toasted him.
And they told me that that was very important for me. This little sentence: "Don't misunderstood us. We are serious runner." And I keep that sentence in my mind. We are serious runner. To toast to someone who is 7,000 kilometers away, who do not know, even the results have not been published, is not going to save lives or anything else. But they consider themselves serious runner. So I will encourage them to continue doing this serious running.
And I remember there's been a couple times where I'd be at the bar after a run and I'd forget to toast the professor, and people come up to me and say, "When are you going to do the toast? When are you going to do the toast? How come you haven't done the toast yet? Are you going to do the toast?" And I realized that this has really become an important aspect, an important ritual.
Fishtown Beer Runner!
If the toast was simply an excuse for making people running all together, having fun, and socializing, that was worthwhile doing this research.
First time I ran with the beer runners, I think was 3 years ago. And my experience, was just like anybody else's. It was, you showed up for a run, but then you walked away with this totally different experience where, everyone there embraced you. You met all of these great people. You almost forgot the run part. Like I rarely ever remember what route we actually ran to get to the bar. I always remember the people I met there, the different conversations I had. And then, the toast to the professor at the bar, which is always like the culmination of the night, right?
Every week, it's part of the routine. Do we have any new runners this week? And they all get a cheer for joining up. And then from that point on, they're no longer a new runner. They're a part of the group.
Any new runners tonight? New runners? New runners, all right. Yeah.
I'm probably one of the older runners, but I'd swear they treat me as if I was 25 years old.
It's a very inclusive thing. And sometimes these groups can maybe feel a little niche or a little segregated in a way where, like, if you don't know anybody there, you're going to feel kind of uncomfortable coming. But the beer runners is the exact opposite. You're almost kind of elevated if you're a new person, if you're there for the first time. You show up and everyone cheers for you and gives you a high five, and people want to come up and meet you and talk to you. How did you hear about us? So that was my first experience with them, and then obviously every experience since then has been just a continuation of building on those relationships.
We are friends with David on Facebook, and he had posted a link to the Kickstarter video for the fundraising campaign, and I watched the video, and I was really struck by the part where he talks about how he just one day left his house and started running. Just started running one day. And I didn't know that you could just start running one day. I thought you had to work up to it, and I thought you had to be in shape. And so we had been to the gym off and on, and I was always walking thinking, well, once I get good at walking fast, then I can start running. And just watching the video made me realize, oh, you can actually just start running, and that can be the thing that changes, is you can just start running right then and there.
A good number of people couldn't run a mile when they started, and I'm certainly one of those people.
I know that feeling of being not an accomplished runner, or feeling that I don't fit in, or feeling that there's all these other people out there that have more experience.
Not only was I not a runner, I don't like people. I'm not particularly social. I don't know why I thought that something that combines two things I don't like sounded like a good idea.
Like within 2 days, we started running, and we started with
a minute of running and 2 minutes of walking. And I remember the first time we did it, it's like, well, let's skip this running the second time, because that 1 minute was killer.
We couldn't do it.
Yeah.
I want the new runners, the people that are coming into this sport for the first time, to feel welcome and to feel that, this is where we've all been. We all start this way.
I remember my first beer run was to the 700 Club in Northern Liberties. And going down there to Market Street and back, I think was 2.5 miles, something like that. And that was huge for me. And the few people who I knew were already in the group were congratulatory, even in that accomplishment.
Went out with the intention that I was going to run once a week. I was going to run on Thursdays. I would run to the bar very slowly. I was almost always one of the last ones there. And that was all the running I was going to do.
We ran into David at the neighborhood chili cook-off, and I thought, you know, why don't I share my story that he actually really inspired me to start this running program.
At some point, something switched, and these same people who kept talking to me week after week, even though I didn't have a whole lot to say, started to have longer conversations. We started to hang out outside of Beer Runners.
When we get good enough, you know, when we can run a 5K, when we can run that, we'll start running with the Beer Runners. And David said, no, Thursday, this Thursday.
And he introduced us to several people that said, we'll run with you. If you're going to run slowly, if you're going to walk, we'll go with you. And these were marathoners. The people had just finished a half marathon.
And now watching new people come in who come in and show up a little bit and are sort of quiet at first, and then within a few months, it's like they were never not there. They're just ingrained in the group fully.
And they looked at us and they said, no, we understand, we were there too. And I didn't think I would ever be able to run a half marathon, and here I am.
I joined the Beer Runners in February of that year, and a friend of mine instantly told me, you have to sign up for Broad Street. Sure, it's 3 months away, you've never run more than a mile, and that's 10 miles. That's what you're gonna do.
I'll start running maybe a second day a week, just the same kind of distance, just see if I can get like a little bit faster. And I went out the first week that I made that goal of I'm gonna run a second time. I went out for, it's supposed to be a 4-mile run, and I got almost done with the 4 miles and was like, you know, I think I could run a little bit farther. And so I doubled the loop that I had planned. It was by far my longest run, and I remember before I was even done with it being like, shit, like I'm gonna have to do this now. Like this is gonna be a thing. I know I'm in now.
I know you can arrive, no questions asked, but we really wanted to arrive having gone the whole way on foot, running and walking. So we went and did the whole thing 2 days before.
You run your first 10 miles, and then at that point, it's about, okay, well, what's next?
I guess my first marathon was about 6 months after that. That spring, a couple of us did our first 50K together, and then have run, I guess I am at, I think 12 marathon or more races at this point in, I guess, 2.5, 3 years.
When I was training for this first marathon, most of it was by myself. I was making sure I got home from work to put some miles in, and all that's kind of solo, whereas when you're running with a group and you have these other fun people with you, it doesn't feel like a chore anymore.
You move on, like, all right, what else can I do? We did trail runs, we did mud runs, which are more fun than any road race I've ever done. They're really absolutely amazing, and so recently I did my first 25K, 15.5 miles, and I have no idea what's next.
The very first run was to the bar where we had our first kiss.
At the Khyber.
On our first date.
And at the time when that happened, it was up on the second floor when the second floor was open. And now the second floor is closed, but it was open for the special event of the Beer Runners being there.
Through Beer Runners, I met all these other people that were pretty inspirational to me, that were running marathons once a month and running ultra marathons. I didn't even know what an ultra marathon was. But it sounded like something different and something that all of a sudden now I wanted to do, and I don't even know why.
For the first time since we got married, since we've been together, we were able to go back to the place where we had our first kiss, and
we hadn't been back there since.
That place is sort of like a beginning spot for us, and we've been going every Thursday and running with the Fishtown Beer Runners ever since that night.
Ran my first 50 miler, a month ago?
So probably since then I've ran about 20, maybe 25 marathons or ultra marathons. none of my times have been especially good or, very competitive, but it's more about just getting out there and having fun.
There are so many people who only know me as a runner, and they think that this is just something that I've always done or that I'm not like them. You realize I had the same thought, I had the same intention. That's the way it goes for everyone. We all think that that's not us until it is, and then you watch them do these things they didn't think they could.
I think the Fishtown Beer Runners are, in my opinion, probably the most significant entity in terms of influence and recognition in the entire running community. I really do. There's a lot of great clubs in the Philadelphia running community, and a lot of the beer runners run with those other clubs. They're not all just on silos, exclusive clubs. There's a lot of cross-pollination going on. But in terms of running clubs in Philly, I mean, the beer runners to me are number one. Not because they're any better than any other community, but just because they draw a large audience and they switch it up every week, they go somewhere different. And they also give back a lot. So whether it's the partnerships that you develop or whether it's that people show up to an Achilles run on a Saturday morning and they see a lot of beer runners there, or they show up to a beer run on a Thursday where some of the proceeds are being donated to a specific organization. The beer runners have many tentacles within the running community. And so I think that their place in the running community is they're one of the central forces here.
One of my friends, Len, who is a beer runner and was one of my mentors for training me for my first marathon, has been very active in the community in supporting a variety of charities. And he organized one of the Fishtown Beer Runners' first community events, and that was for Phil Abundance.
We've got a bunch of really like-minded and well-intentioned people all at the same place at the same time. So what can we do with this that would be sort of positive for, for the community, for us, for people's lives, like a good positive experience. So one of the first things I thought of was Phil Abundance, because they require 20 or 30 people to go to their warehouse and volunteer and to pack boxes, to sort boxes of food that go to families in the Philadelphia area who will, who need them immediately, and to kind of keep them from going hungry. So I thought it was a good fit. Everybody in the group was really for it, so it seemed like a positive thing that could build on itself. And it's nothing without the people, and the people in Fishtown Beer Runners, I think, are what make the group. They were all for it. They wanted to help. They didn't really ask for any sort of praise or anything, and we went down there and did a pretty tough job for over 3 hours, and you're spending 3 hours of your Saturday giving up your weekend morning to do these types of things to help people less fortunate than you.
My friend Elizabeth emailed me and told me about this running group called Achilles, which supports athletes with various disabilities. And even though the organization is over 30 years old, there was a new chapter forming in Philadelphia. And she thought that I'd be able to help them recruit members and volunteers.
So when I first met David and he was explaining what was going on with the beer runners as far as their charitable endeavors, this is when I realized, it's like, wow, okay, these guys actually are about helping other people. It's not just a bunch of people running and then going and drink beer. Yes, that's part of it, but they're also raising money for a good cause. That's right up my alley. Along the lines of like how the beer runners ended up helping Achilles International, in particular the Philadelphia chapter, this was something I could easily get behind.
I met David through the Achilles International, which is a nonprofit organization that allows people who have an amputee or that have some type of disability where they can't run by him or herself.
We pair those persons with disabilities with guide runners that can go out and compete in races, compete in just normal everyday activities that they might not often get to do on their own.
So people like David who are sighted that do like to run, they come out and volunteer out of their own time to make it possible for people like me and others to run. whether it be a 5K, a 10K, or a half marathon, or a marathon, or an ultra run.
Almost immediately after taking our first steps together, I said, Mark, I've never led a blind runner before. I don't really know how to do this. And he said, David, that's okay. I've never run outside before, so we'll learn this together.
We instantaneously hit it off like buddies, and we're like brothers now, and it's amazing to know him, and plus just meeting the people here through Fishtown Beer Runners. I mean, just amazing friends, amazing people.
And from that point on, we became kind of mentoring each other, him helping me understand the world of the visually impaired, and me helping him understand the running world. And immediately he set a variety of goals for himself, and it was just wonderful to help him achieve his first 5K, his first Broad Street 10-miler, and then his first half marathon.
I didn't want to focus on myself. I wanted to try to help someone that couldn't do what I could do. It's such a unique opportunity to have, to be able to do whatever you want whenever you want to. Now imagine that person that cannot do that. And I really started to focus on that, and that means a lot to me, to help someone that needs my help and appreciates my help. And the reward is, you can't put it into words what happens when you help someone achieve something they were not able to do on their own. That to me is something I will never get over. It's awesome, and I look forward to it every time I get a chance to do it. That is a drug, that is a beer, that is a whatever you want to call it, that you just can't go by. You have to put the effort in and do it on your own, and I absolutely love the reward I get from that.
The professor invited me to Spain in 2011 to come to the medical school and to see the laboratory where he had conducted the research, and to actually participate in a seminar about the applications of their research in Philadelphia. And I think one thing that I discovered is that they were as interested in us as I was and the other beer runners were in him.
I couldn't wait to see the real, authentic movement of Fishtown Beer Runners in Philly, because David came here and he told us about that, but I couldn't believe that they toast from the professor, that they, even they didn't know him, but they have such admiration for him. So I wanted to check it. I left very early in the morning from New York to Philly, and then April took me for a guide. And then I believe the moment I was in David's house there, getting ready, and then he told me, okay, we go running. I opened the door, and the street was full of people. So everybody lived running from David's house, and it was real, 50 people from younger to older, different gender, even 2 pregnant women were there running. So I believe that it was real. I saw how they toast to the professor. And I can remember my main sentence. The professor, Manuel Castillo, has been a very important people here in Granada because he joins medicine and sport. He has been the first person. But I didn't know that he was so important for them in Philly.
The movement grew to the point where the Spanish Brewers Association launched a very major public awareness campaign called Beer Runners to promote responsible consumption and exercise, which they basically launched based on the Fishtown Beer Runners. Of course, we followed it up in 2013 with the Beer Runners Summit in Madrid with over 5,000 runners. So the professor's study inspired me to run and to create the Fishtown Beer Runners. And what I've learned from Manuel, that the Fishtown Beer Runners and my running inspired him to become a runner. He never ran. When we ran at the Madrid Beer Runner Summit, it was his first time running 8 kilometers. It was always a goal of mine to have the beer runners go to Spain. It just made sense that we would go to where it all began. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Fishtown Beer Runners. Spanish version of Fishtown Beer Runners. Responsible running and drinking in the interest of science. Any new runners tonight? So the way it works is we run together for about a block or two, and then we break down at our own paces. Just get to the bar, no questions asked. But tonight, we're going to change it up just a little bit. We're going to run together as a fun run. We're going to look at the beautiful sights of Madrid. And then we have a very special bar tonight. The bartender has graciously opened the bar for us this evening. And he has a wonderful selection of European beers, local beers, beers from all around the world. I'm speechless tonight. This is a very special occasion where the Fishtown Beer Runners we're having our first beer run in Spain. Here in Madrid, and tomorrow we're heading down to Granada to meet the professor. So in the tradition of the Fishtown Beer Runners, glasses raised to the professor! So in 2014, a group of beer runners went over to Spain to meet Manuel. Te presento mi amigo, el profesor Manuel Castillo.
When the professor was waiting at the train station to meet us, besides David, I don't believe any of us have actually met him before. So it was like seeing a rock star. You literally had like goosebumps. Obviously we knew about him, we knew his story, but now it was totally different when he's there.
They're waiting for us. Okay, come on.
Hello, hello, welcome to Granada.
Nice to see you.
Running with the Spanish beer runners was surreal. I had heard about all these things, but it's hard for me to visualize what that actually means until you see a bunch of bright orange beer runner shirts.
We were always kind of connected, but when we got over there and we interacted, we were bonded. What are the odds in life that any of us would ever met each other if it wasn't for this beer running club?
My name is Dani Quintero. I'm like the captain of the Spanish beer runners. I'm controlling and helping the other city captains to organize and to develop the local groups of beer runners. Already we have 46 groups around Spain in different cities. The last one added to the pool is Granada, we did yesterday with the cooperation of the Fishtown beer runners. We brought here the idea from the Fishtown beer runners about beer running. Really, it's the same philosophy, and we try to do exactly the same because it's fun, it's a social run. Now we are like 500 people around the group, and every week we have meetings with 20, 30 people, from really strong runners to people that is just starting running. In these 46 groups in Spain, we have around 7,000 people who has joined the beer running movement. I stopped smoking. I smoked 14 cigarettes per day, so I decided to turn around my life. Now when I joined the beer runners group in Seville, I rediscovered the fun way of running. Our passion is to try to be fit and to have some beers with a friend and smile, and after these meetings there are big smiles in our face always.
Y el caballo en la montaña verde, yo te quiero verla, sí, sí, yo te quiero verla, ya, ya, yo te quiero verla. Con la sombra en la cintura, y ella sueña su baranda, verdes ojos, pelo negro, su cuerpo de fría plata verde, yo te quiero verla, sí, sí, yo te quiero verla, ya, ya, y yo te quiero verla.
On behalf of the Fishtown Beer Runners, we want to thank you very much to our Spanish friends and Spanish runners for hosting us here this evening. We're having a wonderful time, and it's so wonderful to see all of you here with us tonight. We have a very proud tradition of feeling very connected to Spain. In fact, we have the coats of arms of Spain on our shirt. So. But we run every Thursday night in Philadelphia. We run 5 to 10 kilometers. And after every run, we like to toast to the professor, Manuel Castillo, because he is the originator. He did the research, and because of his research, we are all running. So in the tradition of the Fishtown Beer Runners, raise your glass to the professor! Cheers,
everybody! Okay, now. On behalf of all the runners in the world, I thank David for putting any idea into practice, which is much more important than having an idea, than having ideas. So thank you very much for inviting us to run and having beer afterwards. For David, to David!
You couldn't pay, so you got a job instead?
Hey, sometimes you got to work the bill off.
Yeah. Like it's a beer. Yeah. Okay. So don't turn it, because you're spilling. Yeah, you're spilling it. Yeah.
It was an amazing experience to be able to toast a professor in person. I mean, for 6.5 years, we'd been toasting someone in absentia, and to actually have the professor in the room with us. And then when he turned around and toasted all of us, it really brought into focus that we had not only created a community of runners, but an international community of friends.
I want to say thank you to all these people from Philadelphia, the Fishtown Beer Runners, for coming here, because thanks to your visit, I realized something really good you are doing. I mean, this research project in scientific terms was good, interesting, different, unique. But from that idea, like Manuel said, you are now doing much more. You are supporting your local communities, which is great. That philosophy of helping each other, support your local community, we should learn that here, Spaniards and many other European countries, because maybe we think the government will solve those issues. Maybe because in the US, the federal or state governments do not care that much officially. You help each other. I mean, we think here, what can I do individually? You are now showing us what we can do.
It was a wonderful opportunity to see that not only where the beer study had taken place, but to actually participate in an ongoing study that was being conducted.
Of you will come with me, and 5 will go with my friend, my Magdalena, to the meeting room there to do the different tests. Okay? We are going to do a basic strength test. After that, we will drink the beer, right? And we will do the test again. Okay? The main aim of the whole research project is to know if one person is training, for instance, strength training or high intensity interval training, and after each session having a beer would affect the final output of this training.
Yeah, you have to wait 20 minutes. So drink and then wait 20 minutes. And you have to do everything again. So jump, hydrate, okay?
The test that we did in my lab here was to know the acute effect of drinking a beer on the strength response of healthy subjects. Regarding the legs, which were more interesting, we found a small but significant increase in the strength after the ingestion of this amount of beer.
Come on. 5 more. 5 more to go. 4.
You have done all your tests?
Yeah, sí. Gracias.
Wow.
It tastes really good.
That's your trophy.
I don't know what it means.
It can be explained by many factors. The fact that the people were more motivated, or the level of the threshold of pain was lower after having a beer. I mean, I'm not saying that this strength gaining is directly related to a specific effect of beer. It can be a psychological effect of drinking a beer, and the subjects were participating in a study in which they knew what they were doing.
Good.
He already drank.
Oh!
No, I didn't tell you to drink. Look at me. He told you to drink.
He told me to drink.
Sorry,
Yes.
Point checking. Don't drive now. Don't drive.
Okay.
Oh,
wait.
Okay.
How is it going? Yeah?
Very good.
Did you do your test?
Yes. I failed the breathalyzer.
Sorry?
Yeah. I failed the breathalyzer.
One of the most important, of the better time I've ever had in my life in relation with research is what I had this morning. First, for the coming of the Fishtown beer runners here to Granada, for the presentation of David April and Eric Fiedler, and the testimonial of the different beer runners, the testimonials of my colleagues from the research group, and the different presents that you offer me.
The Council of the City of Philadelphia is pleased to recognize and thank Professor McDougall for his innovative research as he welcomes Philadelphia's Fishtown beer runners to the University of Granada Medical School.
has been highly gratifying. Much more than publishing another paper in a high-impact journal, which would be maybe the 251 paper. One more. But this one, what I had this morning, is just once in my life, and it has touched my heart, really.
I think we all go through adversity. And I think very often adversity can be the catalyst that enables us to grow if you embrace it.
It was discovered that I had extra bone in my hip and also a tear to the cartilage inside the socket of my hip. Because of that, I obviously couldn't run still, and I had to have surgery on my hip. I wasn't running for about 9 months. For a long time, I was just coming out after the runs and being part of the Fishtown beer drinkers. I knew there was a chance that I might never run again. I really was going into it being like, I just want to be able to run at all. Afterwards, I had pretty limited mobility for about a month. And at that point, it was really awesome because the Fishtown beer runners came to me. People were coming by and bringing me food and entertaining me and making me not go totally stir crazy while stuck in my house, because I don't do stuck in my house particularly well. Everybody was really like hopeful, I think even at times when I was feeling really frustrated and really like down on the whole process, because it was really, really hard. And I think having everybody around to kind of buoy my spirits and all of that was incredibly helpful. I got to start running in April of last year, 2013, which was about 3 months after the surgery.
Suddenly, my life was turned upside down, and here I was moving to Philadelphia completely alone. You know, I just got out of a long relationship. I guess when the shit hit the fan with that, the first thing I did was stop drinking, because I associate drinking with celebration and having a good time, not with hiding from, you know, the shit that may be happening in my life. So early this winter, I started running on a treadmill just at the gym we have at where I work. That's opened the door to the social club of the Fishtown Beer Runners. I think it was like my 3rd or 4th time out. David had just gotten back from Spain, and by this point I had learned, hey, I can't be running up front with the fast runners. So I kind of figured, oh, David's probably more my speed, and I kind of hung back a little bit and ended up just running side by side with him.
The other thing that happened last year right after I actually started to be able to run again is that my dad got very ill. He'd been sick for a long time, became much more ill, and then got a diagnosis of terminal cancer in August of last year and passed away in October of last year. I think with both the running and with the community of beer runners, without all of that, I probably would be in a much different place, and I think I would have totally lost it because it was so much stress in such a short period of time. I never expected this running community that I joined up in 2011 to be what kept me standing over the course of one of the most challenging years of my life. You know that you're going to make friends when you're cheery and you're being funny and you're going to have that support, and it means so much more when that support is showing up when you're just physically showing up. You've stopped being the person that you see as being like the funny, social, cheery person, and they carry you through in a way that you never could have anticipated. That part is still something that I can't imagine like living without, because that part's amazing, and also why I'm still smiling.
David's, he's an amazing guy in terms of just conversationally, like one of the nicest, most genuine people. You know, it's rare these days when you meet someone that genuine and you can just tell they're not bullshitting you, they're not trying to sell you anything or impress you or anything. David's just he's just a good, like, caring guy. Just told him my situation, how I moved here completely alone, and sort of what led up to that, what transpired in our lives with our previous relationships. I mean, they were almost identical. You come through something like that and you realize, you know, hey, of all the things I got going for me, my health is one of them, so I'm gonna take care of that. David wasn't a runner before that, I wasn't a runner before that, and now it's weird how we just sort of came through that.
I use running to get through a very difficult period in my life. And it was because of running that I was introduced to a new chapter of my life. On one of my trips to Spain, I had a meeting with a professor, and we were meeting with the organizers of a run. And this lovely woman walked into the meeting. Her name was Carmen. And she might tell you a different story, but my story is it was love at first sight. It certainly was for me. I didn't go to Spain during that trip to meet anyone. It was the furthest thing from my mind. I was just in the moment. So in January of 2014, we actually got married in Madrid. Just so many unexpected things have happened, so many opportunities. And perhaps one of the most unexpected things to come out of all of this was the fact that I met my wife.
Everybody has their own passion, and they're going to follow it, and they're going to be where they feel like they need to be. And on Thursday nights, that's where I feel like I need to be now.
We've had people that completed the Boston Marathon run next to somebody that's never done a 5K, but on that particular Thursday night, everybody's equal.
And it doesn't matter how much you do. If you want to walk to the pub, it's totally fine. If you want to run just to the subway station or the L and hop on that and go to the pub, I think that works too. It's really all about just getting off your butt and getting out there and doing it.
Whether you're the fastest runner or the slowest runner, it doesn't matter. There's no ego.
Thank you very much for making Fishtown Beer Runners what it is. We've run through a lot of good times together. We've run through some bad times together. A lot of running. We've had non-runners run their first 5Ks. We've had 5K people run their first half marathons. We've had half marathoners run their first marathons, and we've had marathoners run their first ultras, which is amazing.
I'm proud to call these people my friends.
the story hasn't stopped yet, is the clear message here. It just keeps on growing.
I think that something that started off for me as a personal struggle has influenced and inspired others. To me, that's what keeps me running.